Good morning, everybody. Dr. Fresh Hour with Fresh Start with a new video today. And we are going to be discussing the paleo diet and keto and a little bit about nutrient, efficiency. So as always, my website, startfreshmd.com. If you're curious about signing up, I have my free body preparation program that I like most people, almost everyone, to start on because it's kind of a fundamental building block to getting you back in shape, getting you healthy again. And I have a basic plan and a premium plan, and the only real difference is the amount of time we spend talking to each other. And currently, until I keep filling up, this 30 minutes is more like an hour now. And as always, the donate button does work. And if you have any questions, feel free to either fill out this form or email me or call or text me. And I'd be happy to address any and all of your questions. So before we dive in, I had some people ask me, what's the basic framework? What are people getting whenever they sign up? So to keep it as simple as I possibly can, the way it works is we get on the phone, we talk, FaceTime, whatever you would prefer. We go over where you're at, what you've done before in the past, because what you've done, let's specifically say exercise-wise, drastically dictates where we go exercise-wise. There's something called muscle memory, which has to do with the satellite cells or the nucleation of your muscle cells, and that's why somebody who's been pretty fit before can kind of get fit again or increase their muscle size close to what it used to be, whereas someone who's never had that before in the past might have to work a little bit harder to achieve a certain level of lean or muscle mass, right? And as far as your diet is concerned before, if you've tried fasting, if you've done one of these horrible programs that just cut calories out, we can make that a positive. We can say, look, you've experienced with fasting and nutrient deficiency, so you know what it's actually like to be hungry, where most people think they know, but they have no idea. So we kind of base all of that. We go off of what kind of medical conditions you have, what medications you're currently taking, and we develop a plan, a strategy. And I'm a very let's build off of positives type of person. So we might focus more on exercise first. We might focus more on diet first. In general, I believe that there's the big three: hydration, sleep, and diet. And diet is a word that I don't really like because I feel like it's a frustrating term for a lot of people, right? Immediately when I say diet, there's the stigma to it, right? So in reality, what I mean is we're making sure you're eating as much real food as we possibly can. We'll focus on the macronutrients and all that stuff later. I just want to make sure that you're getting restful sleep, not just sleep, that you're drinking enough water, which I talk about how to do that in my body preparation plan, but obviously we'll talk about it. And then I want to make sure, stress super important, but as far as the big three, what you eat, where you sleep, how you sleep, and do you drink enough water? Those are the biggest bang for your buck. We make sure we cover those first, which for some people, that's all they really need. Others have no idea how to exercise, so I kind of take the role of their personal trainer a little bit and get them moving, and I focus primarily on mobility and flexibility and improving passive and active ranges of motion first, because that has the greatest effect on injury prevention. So that's a little bit about what I do and what I do with my clients. So let's dive into this. So as usual, I like Healthline because it's kind of a good place to start. They usually don't lie to you too much. So what is the paleo diet? I'm sure a lot of you guys think this: hunter-gatherer, right? How our ancestors ate and gathered. So it's not only a diet, it's kind of a lifestyle, right? They focus on high-intensity interval training, which would kind of be like if you're going and hunting. Obviously, it's in the ballpark of a lower carb way of eating, higher protein, higher fats, right? So let's see. There's no one right way to eat for everyone. I agree with that, especially on your geological location. Paleo could mean different things for different populations, which is why if you research your ancestry, generally speaking, your body and the way your gut processes those foods, it can dictate it a little bit, depending upon where you originated from or, where your ancestors lived the longest at, right? So let's see. A low-carb diet high in animal foods, while others follow a high-carb diet with lots of plants. Consider this as a general guideline. So you eat meat, fish, eggs, vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, herbs, spices, healthy fats, and oils. You avoid processed foods and sugar and soft drinks. That's kind of like any real basic thing. I don't think you necessarily have to avoid all of it, but the more you focus on having more good things, the less room and time you have for this. So I think psychologically that's a lot easier to wrap your brain around, right? So you avoid most dairy products, which would be a little different than keto, which we're going to talk about. Legumes, artificial sweeteners, vegetable oils, margarine, and trans fat. And I'm not necessarily super against vegetable oils. Margarine, maybe a little bit. Trans fats, everyone should obviously be against trans fats since we created them and they're horrible for you. And we can talk about fats. I could actually do a video on that. So yeah, all of these basically just fall in what they just said, So trans fats found in margarine and various processed foods. I mean, just like 10 or 20 years ago, people were like, margarine over butter. And now we've realized that these hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils are horrible for you. Artificial sweeteners, super controversial. There's a lot of studies that show whenever you get your sweet fix with this, that you don't desire it elsewhere. There's other studies that show that by just getting maybe you don't even get your fix from this and you actually still consume just as much, if not more. And for me personally, having a Diet Coke and some aspartame, I really don't like sweet foods that much anymore. Like even just having an apple or strawberries is like, it hits me so hard. And previously, I could just destroy some candy, and it's painful for me to admit that I can't have Sour Patch Kids anymore because it's too sweet for me. Highly processed foods, that's just, obviously most of the things in the middle of the grocery aisle. Whenever you start looking into vegan and ultra organic stuff, or like the ultra health foods or camping foods, it's obviously different if you're going on an excursion and you need some super fortified, dense, nutritionally dense foods. Different story altogether, right? But okay, meat, fish, seafood, eggs, vegetables, fruits, tubers. Fruits is a little different for keto because obviously there's a lot of simple sugars in these. Nuts and seeds. I know people think nuts and seeds are super nutritious for you. That's right. They're one of the most nutritionally dense foods on the planet. So a lot of people will grab a handful of almonds and not realize that they just had several hundred calories. And in reality, if you just have a few almonds and put them away, the satiating effects of the fat, which is the second most satiating macronutrient under protein, will take effect and you won't be as hungry. And for everyone arguing that certain carbs are more satiating or filling, that primarily has to do with the fiber in them. Which, yeah, so whenever I say macronutrients, it is fat, or protein, then fat, then carbohydrates, as far as what makes you the most full. So salt and spices, yes. And I actually had this conversation recently with a client talking about having salt. And most people want to lower their sodium for their blood pressure. However, by just decreasing your body fat percentage and improving your gut health, salt's really not going to be that big of an issue. And most likely your blood pressure is related to stress. So by decreasing salt, you're just kind of playing with your renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system more so than you're actually alleviating the root cause of it in the first place, which could be elevated stress, chronic stress. So then there's modified paleo diets and what to drink: tea, coffee, water, caffeine, appetite suppressant, blah, blah, blah. Caffeine can also increase your blood pressure and your energy. So if you have congestive heart failure or any type of, what is the word I'm trying to look for? If you have any atherosclerosis or buildup of plaques in your arteries, things like stents, bypasses, blah, 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 it's always a good idea to be kind of careful with how many stimulants you put into your body. And a good rule of thumb is the better shape you're in cardiovascularly, the better your cardiovascular system is going to be at handling stimulants. In reality, a lot of the issues you come from was when you take a super sedentary, overweight person that can't even, walk a mile, let alone run it, and then they load up on caffeine, and bam, what do you know? Something bad happens, right? So this is going to give you a little breakdown of some things that you should do, and some hacks. Oh, look, handful of nuts right there. So, okay. Now, the difference between paleo and keto. This is going to talk about what the paleo diet is. So now we just did that. So the keto diet is essentially an extremely low carb, high fat, because you've got to think protein is a building block. Protein's the Legos. Fat and carbohydrates are the energy that you use. And your body is really good at doing both. Although it prefers sugar a lot of the times, well, I mean, that's kind of debatable, but sugar is just easier for your body to use. It's not as efficient as fat, and whenever I say efficient, there is more superoxide radicals released. So technically, having a primarily carbohydrate diet is associated with an increased cancer risk, because that's pretty much what causes most cancers, right? The ketogenic diets, you kind of get a bad breath and a musty odor. However, your body gets better at using fat for energy. So if you're trying to lose fat, just kind of making sense there, the more upregulated all of the enzymes and processes are to use fat for energy, the better your body and more efficient it's going to be at burning or using the burned fat. Because with fat loss, it's not just, breathing out the fat, which is how you get rid of it, right? Unless you have some serious issues with your gut and then you just poop it out and don't even absorb it in the first place. But you have to mobilize it into your bloodstream, and then your body actually has to utilize it. So if you're on a diet that is primarily focused on using fat for energy, it just makes sense. It's going to be a lot easier for your body. If you're in a ketogenic state, all the machinery's already there and turned on. Everybody's there working that day. They're, it's not a Monday for them. It's like a Thursday or Friday, ready for the weekend work ethic. So I might have some people roll their eyes at me about that, but that's kind of how I think about it. And in reality, if you're on a ketogenic diet, most people with ketogenic diets report much more rapid fat loss. In reality, you should kind of be on a bit of a balanced diet. That way you avoid the whole urge to binge and refeed super hard, which refeeding's big. I talk about that a lot. It's super important for metabolism. So here's a breakdown. A lot of fat, a lot of protein, very low carbohydrates, right? So let's see, shifted significantly in favor of fat, moderate protein, and very few carbs. Then you get into the carnivore diet, which is primarily like a lot of protein, and when you have natural sources of protein, you're going to have a greater source of fat. It's extremely difficult to find carbs and protein in nature. Extremely difficult. There's only a few vegetables that really have that much protein, and when you look at it gram for gram, it seems great. But when you want to eat 5 cups of broccoli versus a steak, that gets a little exhausting, So yes, they have a lot in common. They both emphasize whole foods, which every diet should do. They should eliminate grains and legumes, the phytoestrogens and grains, because we have found a way to make grains horrible for us by the processing and the stone ground versus the ultra fine powdery ground grains that we do, which just increases their glycemic index and turns them into essentially sugar. We have eliminated the certain parts of the actual grain that contain the most amount of protein, and now grain is really short. And the reason grains are so short now is because we can put more on top. Grains used to have a really long stem that came up, right? And it was like, as far as like the wheat is concerned, we've made it now dwarf wheat, so it doesn't have as long of a stem and it doesn't tip over and fall and die, but it can also support way more. So in reality, sure, we have a lot more grain produced, but the grain produced in the soil it's produced in, it's just kind of a perfect storm to having essentially a simple sugar under the guise of a multigrain, because in order to be considered multigrain, you only have to have a certain percent of each grain, and then we just fortify it with vitamins and minerals and say that it's great for you and can maybe lower your cholesterol, because by having more grains, you're having less meat and fat, so your cholesterol is going to go down. Weird. Doesn't necessarily mean it's any better in your HDL and LDL ratios, but anyway. So they both eliminate added sugar. That's really good. Healthy fats, awesome. I don't really worry too much about healthy and unhealthy fats. Have a lot of polyunsaturated fats, but there's people on both sides of the fence there. And polyunsaturated fats would be like your fish oils. I think it's like your omega-3 and your omega-6. Vegetable oils, safflower oil, peanut oil, ultra polyunsaturated fats. However, some of those are high in anti-nutrients like the phytates, the lectins, and the oxalates. And it's like, man, what do I eat? And in reality, the more you stick to just having whole foods, eliminating as many processed grains as you can, there's not a lot of bread fields out there, right? So the less that we're tampering with the food before we eat it, the less we soak it in things and pre-digest it, despite how amazing it tastes. We're taking a lot of the work out of digesting it, and there is a thermic effect of digestion, protein and then fat and then carbs, which it's statistically significant, but it's overplayed to some degree. I just like to try and, I like my steaks fairly raw. I want to be able to chew them. I want my gut to have to work to digest them. I like my vegetables very, very raw, crunchy, fiber. If I cook them, yeah, I might make some nutrients more available, but heat label vitamins like vitamin C are destroyed. Fun tangent, microwaving is the best way to preserve heat label vitamins, despite everyone thinking microwaving is terrible. They both may be effective for weight loss. Weird. Anytime you eliminate hyperpalatable processed foods, you are going to lose weight. That is basically, I don't care if it's an association. I will say this. If you eliminate simple sugars and processed foods from your diet, the hyperpalatable foods like chicken nuggets that make you be able to eat way more than you normally would, you'll lose weight regardless, right? And I love that they have to say may because they don't want to get sued or have somebody quote some article that some pharmaceutical company or nutritional company paid for. Ugh, it's exhausting. So paleo is more of an ideology, right? Keto is more macronutrients, bro science. Keto, did I have the level of ketones in my urine strip? Yes, let me tell everybody about it, It's like borderline as annoying as everyone telling everyone that they got vaccinated when in reality it's a personal choice. And you know what? There was a lot of people that didn't want to get the flu vaccine and didn't want to be bothered by it. And I don't know, it was okay to dump on them, but it's like now that we have like the corona COVID vaccine, it's only been out for like a year. There's some people that are a little leery of getting it, obviously if your health conditions are the same or greater than the effects of the vaccine, probably just get the vaccine, don't risk it. But it's like, I don't know, people just get so worked up, they just look for stuff to be angry about. It's kind of annoying. So paleo allows for whole food carbs. So that's kind of an important difference where keto is just really low carb. Paleo is more just like plants and animals, So let's see. Conversely, the keto diet restricts all rich sources of carbohydrates, including starchy vegetables, most fruits, grains, sweeteners, and most legumes. And I don't really know. Legumes have the phytoestrogens, which it's pretty debated upon, but depending upon your own unique physiology and gut and genetic makeup, the legumes and the anti-nutrients and stuff might play a bigger role. Just like some people are really sensitive to gluten and other people it doesn't bother them. The majority of people in this world are lactose intolerant to some degree, right? So to say that we can be lactose intolerant or gluten intolerant, but not anti-nutrient intolerant, which the anti-nutrients have been around forever because it makes people anti-nutrient. The way I think about anti-nutrients is they're things in vegetables and fruits and all kinds of stuff that keep you from digesting them super, like all the way. So that way when you poop, you spread them out, right? Pretty convenient, pretty smart stuff. Excuse me. So keto allows dairy and some soy foods. Big difference. Keto's all about macronutrients, right? Dairy's a pretty good way to have your protein and your fat. There is some sugar, hence the lactose in dairy. But in soy food, macronutrient-wise, soy is amazing, but super controversial. And I think it's controversial because for some people it actually does matter, and for other people it doesn't do anything. It doesn't affect them negatively at all. So the bottom line is the ketogenic diet is characterized by high fat and low carbohydrate intake. Or content, intake of that content. It may be effective for weight loss and blood sugar control. Obviously, whenever you reduce carbohydrates, you're going to have a better control over your blood sugar. And if you're trying to reverse diabetes, be it diet alone, to reduce and get rid of diabetes, your overall glucose, your basal glucose, or your average of your glucose throughout the day, the month, the year, needs to be low enough that your body is now receptive enough to insulin, which is the hormone you're resistant to get the sugar out of your blood and into your muscles and your liver and just out of your body, get it out of your bloodstream, right? That's what insulin sensitivity is. Insulin sensitivity is your body's ability to respond to the hormone. And when you're not able to respond to insulin, your blood sugar is elevated for longer. And it doesn't really matter. Does obesity cause diabetes, or does the insulin insensitivity cause obesity? You know what I mean? Like, is it chicken or which came first, chicken or egg? A lot of people get caught up in that, and it's ridiculous. You don't see a lot of skinny people with diabetes. The skinny people you see with diabetes are the people that have yo-yo dieted themselves to where they have no lean muscle mass whatsoever, which muscle is an extremely big player in insulin sensitivity and controlling your blood sugar, right? So long story short, anytime you reduce carbohydrate content, simple sugars, or even just starchy carbs, over a long period of time, your body will be more receptive to sugar and insulin, and you will no longer be diabetic. Just kind of works that way. And depending upon how far you are and how burnt out your pancreas is, maybe you're no longer technically diabetic because your insulin sensitivity and your A1C are super great, but you still might need metformin or a little bit of insulin to help you get through the day because your pancreas just can't make it anymore, right? All righty. So, can these help you lose weight? Well, we talked about this a lot, but they have some pretty good principles in here that I think are worth mentioning. High in protein. You need to increase your protein intake when you are losing weight. Whenever you're trying to lose weight, it's kind of a state of stress. And your body is getting rid of water, it's getting rid of fat, it's getting rid of your glycogen, which usually has to get depleted for any significant fat loss to happen in the first place, which is why fasting and weight loss and fat loss are associated together, right? Fasting cardio and all this stuff. Deplete your glycogen. In reality, it doesn't really work that way. But when you increase protein, your body wants to almost get rid of your muscle. Muscle wants to, like your body only has your muscle, right? It's form matches function kind of thing. Unless you're using it, your body thinks it's excess baggage and it doesn't need it because muscle takes a lot of energy to maintain. So whenever you cut calories, that's why I am such a big fan of exercise, including resistance training. Because by resistance training or lifting weights or even doing body weight squats or sit-ups or anything like that, you're telling your body physiologically that it needs that muscle. And certain hormone triggers like growth hormone, testosterone, these things all kind of come into play because, yeah, cortisol when you fast is elevated, right? And cortisol is catabolic, CC. However, whenever you fast, your growth hormone and your testosterone are also elevated, and those are muscle building. They're anabolic and they're muscle preserving. That's how people can cut calories and keep their muscle. They increase their protein intake by reducing their fat and their carbs. So their calories are lower, but they're still having enough protein that their body gets it from the diet and doesn't need to get it from their muscles. So, long story short, everybody should increase their protein intake. Very few people, I think it's like 0.7 grams per pound. It's almost like the maximum you can do or your body can utilize without anabolic steroids. So anybody who tells you to have a gram per pound, unless you have some gut issues going on, they're full of crap or they're on steroids, or they just don't know what they're talking about. Low in carbs. Yes, it is extremely hard to be diabetic without carbohydrates and sugar. I will say virtually impossible. If you're really overweight and you yo-yo diet yourself into a state of almost zero muscle whatsoever, you could probably figure out a way to be diabetic. It would be extremely difficult. But if we just eliminated simple sugars and processed sugar, really just processed sugars and carbohydrates, and we just ate real food, nobody would be overweight or diabetic. Extremely difficult. I mean, especially you go back a few hundred years, it was hard to be fat. It was really difficult to be fat, and the only people that were fat were super rich, sedentary people that just didn't do anything and ate all day, right? Like, anyway, I don't know if that's getting caught in the weeds or if that's just a good conversation to have. Reduces caloric intake. Yeah, both of these kind of are big fans of fasting, right? To get into a ketotic state, a lot of them encourage fasting or just reducing, your carbohydrate intake, and a lot of people just prefer fasting. So regardless, whenever you're eliminating any type of food, which both of these are elimination diets in a sense, you're eliminating foods, you're going to be reducing your total caloric intake because you have a decreased amount of foods that you can eat. And since most of us eat a lot of processed foods and sugars, when we reduce them, it's hard to find things that we like and enjoy, and overall you end up losing weight. In reality, the calorie reduction is what's actually happening to make you lose weight. The law of thermodynamics, it's a law because it doesn't lie, right? And I had this conversation, it's always calories in versus calories out. However, the calories in, that's set in stone. The calories out, everyone wants to excite your basal metabolic rate. In reality, what you do as far as do you exercise, do you lift weights or resistance train? How is your stress? How is your sensitivity to insulin and cortisol? How is your gut health? That dictates the calories out, which is why there's such a play in that, and also why some people can eat whatever they want and never gain weight. It's interesting. Eliminating highly processed foods. There you go. That's all you really need to say. You eliminate those and you don't really do anything else with your life, you'll probably lose weight. Just that's a pretty simple bang for your buck. Added sugar, super big deal. I don't care how amazing your sugar is. I don't care how natural it is, what part of the world it's from. Sugar, as much as people want to twist and turn their head to tell you it's great, unless you're an athlete or a bodybuilder and you want really simple sugars because they're easy to track, you got to work out a lot, so you need to, excuse me for that. You got to work out, so you need that quick energy. If you're trying to lose weight, having simple sugars is a horrible idea. Unless you're a diabetic and you start to bottom out and you need something to get you up pretty quickly. It's hard to rationalize it other than rewarding yourself, which, the psychological side of this is a big deal. So if you need to reward yourself one day or for one meal, do it. Refeeding is huge. And by refeeding, I mean having a larger amount of calories than you normally do. It's kind of like a reset button, right? If you just drastically reduce calories and you never drastically increase them or refeed them, or dare I say the word binge, your metabolism tanks. And fasting is a way to avoid that because fasting maintains and even increases your metabolism or metabolic rate, whereas just chronic caloric restriction is concerned. If you eat 500 or 600 calories a day for 6 to 8, 10, 12 weeks, your metabolism is going to take a very long time to rebound after that because you have this little metabolic adaptation that takes place where your metabolism starts cutting corners. It starts cutting corners. So, fun fact, that's why things like cold therapy don't necessarily work. Or people like to shiver to trigger the shiver response and upregulate brown fat to burn more calories because that's why babies are so warm. They have more brown fat. Brown fat burns a ton of calories. It's super inefficient. And whenever things are inefficient metabolically, they release heat. However, whenever you take this into the lab and you study this, sure, they burn a lot of calories when they're really cold, but their body adapts because it's really great at that, and they burn less calories when they sleep. They burn less calories when they do everything else besides whenever they're shivering. So the calories actually kind of level out. That's why you don't really hear a lot about the cold immersion therapies anymore for weight loss, because they realize that our bodies are a lot smarter than we think they are. And anyway, it was just on a podcast I was listening to, so it was kind of interesting. All right, may reduce belly fat. Of course it will. Obviously it will. Most of your visceral abdominal fat will be drastically reduced with just things like fasting and eating more real foods and less processed foods. Insulin sensitivity. Anytime you reduce the amount of sugar you're putting into your mouth, you're going to increase your insulin sensitivity. You fast, you increase your insulin sensitivity. You lift weights or exercise or high intensity interval training, you're increasing your insulin sensitivity. That's why I like to attack it from more than one way. I like to experiment with fasting. I like to experiment with exercise and also with diet. So now I'm hitting my insulin sensitivity and my body's ability to respond to it in 3 different ways. May reduce the risk of heart disease. Sure, when you lose weight, decrease your blood pressure, and you improve your HDL to LDL ratios, it's odd how that works. Reducing inflammation, that's kind of a controversial topic, but in reality, if you just reduce stress, you reduce inflammation. If you figure out what foods your body is better at responding to, and chronic inflammation can be allergies, it can be related to your diet because your GI's immune system is bigger than the rest of your immune system. Anyway, that one's kind of controversial, but in reality, I would say it would definitely, if you followed it, it would. The systemic signs of the systemic inflammation are different for everybody. So eat more veggies, eat a variety of fruits, prepare in advance, meal prep. I don't like meal prepping. That's why I kind of make principles for my day and what I'm going to eat because I am not a fan of doing that. Sleep, stay active. There you go. All right. But there's one thing I kind of wanted to talk about before we close because I know this video is getting pretty long. So this article is weight loss maintenance, a review on dietary related strategies. So weight regain after weight loss is a common problem for all those obese or overweight who have had recent weight loss. Different cures such as diet therapy, behavioral therapy, exercise, a mixture of them have been advised as solutions. Is to find the best diet. So this entire review is to find the best diet or eating pattern to maintain weight once you've lost it. And what they came up with healthy diets that recommend low carbohydrate, low GI, and moderate fat foods, glycemic index, but it's not clear really whether they're useful in preventing the weight gain after you've lost it. It seems that consuming fewer calories helps people to keep weight loss. Let's see. Further research to find strategies in obesity management focused on sexual maintenance and weight loss is needed. So they try to do this big long study and figure out, what is the best diet or eating pattern to maintain weight loss once you've had it. And they really couldn't find it. Low glycemic, low carb, moderate fat. They were just kind of giving you a vague answer. In reality, they came up with the idea that they have no idea. And part of the reason I think that they came up with this is because the way that people lose weight is way more important than what they actually do. So I can have 5 different people that lost weight in 5 different ways, right? And depending upon the strategy that they use, if they're actually learning as they're doing it rather than just doing what they're told, once you remove the person that's telling them what to do, they don't need them anymore. And these super, super strict programs that have all these rules, they don't really teach these people why they're doing this in the first place. So these people lose all this weight by following these rules, as they're super type A people most of the time that are really successful with these. And they lose all this weight because they're doing what they're told. However, they don't learn why they're doing what they're told. Whenever kids always ask, why? It matters. So if you don't know why you're losing weight when you're doing what you're doing, or how to actually apply that to a normal life instead of this little fairy tale land of 800 calories a day, you're just going to gain it all back. So in general, having some lower carbs, lower glycemic index, moderate fat, those are super vague reasons. They're reaching. But I personally believe that when you're losing weight or going through this type of journey, you need to be constantly trying to learn why you're doing what you're doing. If you are working with somebody to get healthier, stronger, fitter, less fat, whatever, and they can't explain to you exactly why you're doing this, even your doctor, if he can't explain why you're actually doing something and show you why, or if he's telling you to do something and looks the opposite, he's clearly not doing it. You know what I mean? Like fat doctors telling patients to lose weight. Do you really want to listen to that? You're talking to the beacon of health, right? And guidelines and recommendations, and he's overweight and can't even control it. I don't know. Maybe food for thought. The last thing I'm going to leave you guys with is something that I find very interesting. So fat protein efficient. So let's see here. Ever wonder why Karen goes keto and drops mad weight within the first 2 weeks while you feel like a greasy sloth on high fat, low carb diet? Some experts say it could be because Karen is fat protein efficient. So basically, metabolic typing diet. It might be a little bit of an excuse for people to find ways to eat carbohydrates. However, in the beginning of this video, when I was talking about geologic locations and the nutritional content of the foods that our ancestors used to eat, depending upon where we were from, this kind of plays in that a little bit. So, let's try and find where they talk about these different types. I know it's listed. So, the 3 types. There's someone who's fat protein efficient, so they digest and turn fat and protein into energy a lot easier, which is why they might be better on the, the keto, low carb diets. Those are the people that excel on those. They have the most amazing results. They're fat protein efficient, right? And then there's people that are carbohydrate efficient. Their body digests carbohydrates much more efficiently. So if you were to look at it like evolutionarily or geologically speaking, maybe that, or geographically speaking, I hope I've been using that word. Otherwise, people might be upset and get caught on that if they have as much ADHD as I do. Anyway, if your ancestors primarily ate carbohydrates and corn and plants, maybe evolutionarily speaking, down the DNA line all the way back up to them, they developed a lot better or more efficient gut at doing so, right? I don't know. That's kind of where so they're saying, oh, these people are slow oxidizers. They're sympathetic dominant. Sympathetic is fight or flight. They have smaller appetites, and they love sweets and have fluctuating weights. I think most people that have smaller appetites, they love sweets, and they have fluctuating weights. Your weight will fluctuate when you have small appetites. You eat little small meals, and you love sweets. So again, just kind of something to think. And then there's a mixed group who digest all major macronutrients equally and efficiently. Those people are great, whatever. They generally have average appetites, crave sweets and salty foods equally, and don't struggle with their weight. A diet with equal amounts of the 3 macronutrients is thought to help them. Oh yeah, so let's just encourage a balanced diet. So just something to think about. There's a lot of people that try to explain why we are the way we are, and this is just one mindset or ideology of why we are the way we are. I personally think almost every single person who goes on a low fat or a low carb, high fat, high protein diet will lose weight. And a lot of the people that feel like crap when they first started, their gut was crap when they first started it. Their flora was terrible. And there's going to be an adjustment period. It takes a while for tissues to heal, which is why fasting can be a really great tool for that, because you're eliminating food from your gut and giving it time to heal. I mean, what is like 20 to 30% of all calories go to digestion? So those calories are going to go somewhere else. And you have autophagy or autophagy, which is the recycling of various blood cells, white blood cells, basophils, and you can even have reduced allergic responses and stuff from fasting. So fasting encourages a lot of healing. That's a big, big, big topic that we can talk about. I just kind of wanted to give you guys a little video about paleo, keto, what it is, what's the difference, what do they do. And then I saw this study about how we have, they couldn't come up with anything. It's kind of funny. And this is all the way back in 2014, so who knows, maybe their opinions have changed. And then this is always really cool. I love finding stuff that goes way back in time to try to explain things. Super interesting, super cool. And whenever you're trying to research all of this for your weight loss goals, your strength goals, your muscle goals, whatever it is, it's a good idea to have fun and find some fun nerd reading. So anyway, I'm Dr. Freshour with Fresh Start. Have a great day, everybody, and I will see you next time.